You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button.
One of the things that comes about every college football offseason that I love to plug into is when Athlon gets coaches to talk anonymously about other teams in their league, and they print the quotes. The caveat here is this isn't necessarily head coaches or coordinators. We don't know. It could be a receiver coach at Vanderbilt talking about LSU. We don't know that. So that much is left to the imagination. But these are still head coaches in the Power 5 league talking about other programs in their league. So it could be any staff member in the SEC speaking anonymously about, for example, LSU. So I'm going to run through the 5 quotes attributed to SEC coaches anonymously talking about LSU, and I'll give you my reaction to them, and then we'll run through some of the other interesting ones from around the league, at least that stood out to us. All right, and I'm going to read these verbatim. And they're not long quotes. They're a line or two. But it does give some perspective on what coaches in the SEC think about LSU and other SEC teams. The first one, they, meaning LSU, they've been sort of off schedule, you could say. They had the Heisman quarterback a little too soon because if you plug Jaden Daniels into this year 3 staff and roster, I think they could contend for a conference title and playoff seed. Interesting because, yes, while I do agree, of course, you're taking a step back from Jaden Daniels to Garrett Nussmeier, I don't know that the off-schedule part of LSU is necessarily what's happened at quarterback. The thing that's been off-schedule is, I think, what the next quote attributed to an SEC coach about LSU is. And this is the thing that we've been talking about a ton here, and I think this speaks to the fact that everyone else knows the advantage LSU has that Brian Kelly previously wasn't tapping into, but is now. Here's the quote. Quote, "This is the best assistant coach roster Brian Kelly has had at LSU, and maybe the best of his entire career. It's a bunch of killers in recruiting, guys who are veteran culture builders in the league," end quote. You know why I've sat here for 3 years and talked about Brian Kelly bringing in Brian Polian and needing to experience LSU and Louisiana in this culture before he actually before it fully saturated his being, understanding you have to have Frank Wilson, not Brian Polian. You should never have let Corey Raymond go because that's the guy getting all the dudes to come to LSU, not flying to Vegas to recruit a 3-star cornerback. You get my point? Bo Davis, who not only is tactically one of the best defensive line coaches in the country, but has the reputation as an amazing recruiter. Yeah, that's what you went and did on this staff, and that's why everybody's going to be put on notice in this league. That's the point that made them a little off schedule if you go back to that first quote. Because if Brian Kelly, when he showed up, had retained Corey Raymond, had obviously gone and gotten a Bo Davis or something like that, then yeah, man, you would have had Frank Wilson, you would have had that staff already here. The staff of, as this quote coach said, quote, "It's a bunch of killers in recruiting, guys who are veteran culture builders in this league." That's not me saying it. That's an SEC coach saying it about this LSU staff, and I couldn't agree more. Third one, Joe Sloan is going to work out really nicely as the OC. That's just a one-line quote there. I tend to agree. We saw it in the bowl game. You got talent. The next one's about quarterback. The quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier, isn't as talented as Daniels, but he can manage the talent around him. So maybe not high praise there for Sloan and Nussmeier, but a general feeling that the two of them in tandem can get it done, and I believe that as well. And this is the one that I think all of us are thinking about and talking about when we look at LSU this year and their prospects. Quote, "They could still make the playoff as an at-large this season if the defense gels the way it looks. Blake Baker is a sharp guy. they could be brutal to play at season's end, end quote. I agree with that completely as well. I think the offense is going to be plenty good enough with enough skill guys. You got the veteran quarterback. The question, and I think they're an at-large team. I don't think this is a team that's going to win the SEC because I don't think this is a team that's going to go 12-0 or 11-1 and get to Atlanta and beat Georgia or Texas. I think that's probably your SEC championship game is Georgia, Texas, and Atlanta. Remember, no divisions. But if you can get to 10-2 against this schedule, you're going to be in a 12-team playoff. And if you can get there in the playoff, maybe have a home game, yeah. As this defense keeps getting better, as Nussmeier keeps getting better and better, it's one of those things that I always say. You are allowed to improve as the season goes along. The problem in college football forever is that you've never had the opportunity to compete for a championship, even if you continue to improve. So now you do. The example I give all the time is 2001 LSU. 2001 LSU lost 3 games. They were 5-3 in the SEC because Alabama was on probation, and you had an upset at the end of the season where Alabama beat Auburn. No, Alabama was on probation 0-2. Forgive me. 0-1. You a wacky tiebreaker where Bama upset Auburn, and you got the de facto West Championship game. LSU was rolling by the end of that season. They upset number 2 Tennessee in the SEC Championship game, below the doors off of Big Ten champ Illinois. Like, that team would have been absolute hell on wheels in a playoff. Nobody would have wanted to play them. But you didn't get a chance because the system was what it was. A team like that now could be a title contender. Okay, a couple of other things that stood out to me. One is about Alabama, and this has been my feeling on Alabama. A coach told Athlon anonymously, quote, "This is still a very talented conference title caliber roster. There are some big questions like O-line, but they're not just going to fall off the face of the earth. The question is, if they have a bump, how patient is the fan base?" I think that is the story for Alabama. Again, we've done the Bama is burning thing, and I've laughed at them, and they deserve it. And I don't think that they're going to win the SEC or win the college football playoff. But I also don't think they're going to fall off the face of the earth. I think they're going to be a good team, probably a 9 or 10 win team, which by anybody else's standards would be amazing. But by Alabama standards, that's unacceptable. So how do the fans react when they go 9-3 this year? That's going to be a fascinating thing to see. I also looked at Missouri because I am not a believer in Missouri, especially considering there's no divisions anymore. And the no divisions is going to crush a team like Missouri or South Carolina or Arkansas or Mississippi State and effectively guarantee you're never going back to the SEC championship game. Same thing in the Big Ten. Northwestern and Wisconsin and Purdue are never going to the Big Ten championship game again. When you drop divisions, you're never going to be one of the 2 best teams in the league. So with Missouri, I love what this coach said. They're weaker in the secondary than last year, and they have to replace Cody Schrader, and the league is getting harder with no more Eastern Division and adding the 2 Big 12 teams. Essentially poo-pooing Missouri, which I am a Missouri poo-pooer as well. Again, I think Missouri could win 8 or 9 games. They're not going 10-2 again, and they're certainly not going to be a playoff team. The consensus from these coaches on Ole Miss was all just about to see if they are the experiment in the portal era. One coach said, quote, "Are you Georgia? Are they Texas? Probably not. They don't have the kind of developmental system those elite programs have. The experiment they're running is, can you rent one?" And that is the question. Ole Miss is the test case. They did this year in the portal what A&M tried to do a few years back with their high school class. When they signed all the 5-star blue chippers, it blew up in their face, and 1 year later, half that class was gone. Ole Miss is trying to do it in the portal. It's obviously not sustainable, but can you win big in a one-off year? That's going to be very, very interesting to see. And one more, and this was a Texas A&M quote. Texas A&M, could be really scary on defense. That's not going to be a first-year head coach situation. Elko knows the personnel, and they're really talented. I'll remind you, Brian Kelly took over a roster that had 39 scholarship players on it in that bowl game. Went 9-3, went to the SEC championship game, and wound up winning 10 games in year 1. That could be doable for Mike Elko as well. He's a good coach.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.